The soft chime of a message notification broke the stillness of the first-class cabin. Dante Reeves glanced down at his phone, and in that split second, the world seemed to stop. Atlas Airways acquisition complete. 3.2B confirmed. A cold smile crossed his lips. 3 hours ago, the woman serving him had told him, "Sir, I think you're in the wrong seat." Now she was working for her new boss. Outside the window, clouds churned like a storm. Inside, the air was filled with the scent of roasted coffee and quiet power. Dante, 40, 5 years old, CEO of Reeves Holdings, sat motionless, sculpted in composure. His charcoal grey suit framed his tall figure, the Patek Philippe on his wrist glinting under the light. No one around him knew that behind that calm exterior was a mind spinning faster than the jet engines outside. Flight AAW 237 from Atlanta to San Francisco was supposed to be just another business trip. But today, it had become a stage for a lesson in power and prejudice. They say time moves slower when you are being underestimated. For Dante, every second was etched into memory. From the moment Monica Hale, the blonde chief flight attendant, walked past without acknowledging him, to when she looked down and asked curtly, "Sir, are you sure? This is the first-class cabin." He answered with a polite smile, but something inside him ached. An old wound, one he thought had long healed after decades of success, wealth, and recognition. The wound called prejudice. Around him, the other passengers, mostly white men in tailored suits, were greeted by name, served wine, engaged in pleasant conversation. Dante, meanwhile, was left in sunce invisible. When he asked for a glass of water, Monica looked at him as if she had heard something suspicious. "I'll need to see your ID." The words were light, but they struck his pride like a slap. Dante handed over his card, his face calm and unreadable. Inside, a storm began to rise. A few rows away, Gregory Shaw, a drunk regional director for Atlas Airways itself, downed his second bourbon and laughed loudly. "Don't give him a hard time, Monica. Maybe he won a promotional ticket." The laughter spread quickly. Monica joined in too, a soft chuckle, but sharp enough to turn the air to iron. In that moment, Lena Brooks, a younger flight attendant walking by, caught Dante's eyes. She looked down quickly, embarrassed. Her gaze said everything. "I see it, but I can't stop it." Dante gave her a slight nod, saying nothing. Instead of anger, he opened the Notes app on his phone and typed quietly. 0937, Chief Attendant refused service. Requested ID. Clear discrimination. One tap, one line. But it was the first shot of a much bigger plan than anyone there could imagine. He leaned back, watching the clouds drift beyond the glass. In their reflection, Monica was smiling at another passenger. And Dante wondered to himself, how many times in a lifetime must a man prove he deserves to sit where he belongs? This time he would not prove it. He would own the seat itself. And when the plane touched down, their world, the world of Atlas Airways, would never be the same again. The plane trembled softly as it began to climb. In the first-class cabin, the clicks of seatbelts mingled with the quiet sound of wine being poured. Dante Reeves sat still, eyes fixed on the thick layers of cloud outside. But his mind was caught in a whirlwind of glances that never saw the man behind them. Monica Hale walked past, her expensive perfume lingering in the air. The professional smile was there, but not for him. She leaned toward the seat beside his, where Gregory Shaw, a 53-year-old man with a belly full of bourbon and arrogance, was raising his glass. "Another round, Mr. Shaw?" "Fill it up, Monica, and make it on the rocks. We've got a special guest today." He threw Dante a look, somewhere between mockery and disdain. Dante didn't respond, only tilted his head slightly, as if listening to a piece of classical music that failed to interest him. When Monica returned, Dante spoke softly. "Excuse me. I still haven't been served my water." She paused, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, right, let me check. Maybe the economy cabin ran out of bottles." The words were harmless on the surface, but to Dante they sliced through the calm he was holding together. He looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "It's fine. I can wait." 3 simple words, yet beneath them a storm was brewing. The first-class cabin drifted into a rhythm of service and artificial laughter. A white woman in seat 1C received a blanket, a hot coffee, and a kind word. Dante pressed the call button. The light blinked red. 10 minutes. No one came. 20 minutes. Still nothing. Only when Lena Brooks, the young flight attendant with the apologetic eyes, appeared from the rear galley. Did he finally hear a voice with genuine warmth? "Can I get you anything, sir?" "A glass of water. And thank you." A real smile touched Lena's face, but only for a heartbeat. She glanced around, then whispered, "I'm sorry for the delay. Some people have their own way of serving." "I know," Dante replied, "and I'm taking note." Something in his tone made her pause, not anger, but a promise. In the galley, Carl Denton, the flight supervisor, was chatting with Monica. "You see, Monica, some folks think a suit makes them VIP. Probably an upgrade ticket. People like that, I always think they're special." "Yeah, probably." They both laughed, quietly, carelessly, but enough to carve another notch into the wall of prejudice that hung over the flight. Lena stood nearby, hearing every word. Her heart pounded. She bit her lip, then turned away to continue her work in silence. When the seatbelt sign switched off, Monica walked the aisle, distributing hot towels. 1, 2, 3. And when she reached Dante's seat, she glided past as if it were empty. Dante watched her go, his gaze so cold it didn't need words. He unlocked his phone, opened his email, and began typing quickly to Nina Patel, his assistant. AW237. Clear discriminatory behavior observed. Get me Atlas Airways' financials. Debt structure, stock price, major shareholders. Urgent. He hit send. The glow of the screen lit his face, calm. But in his eyes, the predator had awakened. Across the aisle, Gregory continued to laugh loudly, boasting about investments and mocking the idiots running the company. Dante listened, silent. A man above the clouds, treated like he didn't belong. But in just a few hours, he would own the entire company. And the people laughing at him now would be working for him. Outside, the wings cut through the grey sky. Inside, power was wrapped in silence, the silence of a man who knew that the highest form of revenge is not raising your voice, but signing the contract. The inn. Flight Wi-Fi signal came online, and Dante Reeves immediately opened his laptop. The blue light from the screen reflected across his face. The light of cold precision. The first message from Nina Patel appeared like a bullet fired straight into his thoughts. Atlas Airways, 2 consecutive quarters of restructuring debt, stock down 38%. Parent company, Aeronova, facing liquidity crisis. CEO Harold Whitaker, currently on a yacht in the Mediterranean, not responding to media. Dante's lips curved into a faint, icy smile. In his mind, the pieces began to align. A collapsing airline, a blind executive board, a rotten service culture. And now, one humiliated passenger at the perfect moment. He inhaled deeply, feeling the chilled cabin air against his skin. Somewhere beyond the clouds outside, something was shifting. Not just the wind, but willpower. He launched the secure call app and initiated a video conference with Quincy Hart, head of investments. Quincy's voice came through, low and uneasy. "Dante, I thought you were mid-flight." "I still am," he replied. "But I'm not just flying to San Francisco. I'm about to take an entire airline in a different direction." The silence on the other end stretched for seconds that felt like minutes. "You mean, I'm going to buy Atlas Airways?" The words struck like thunder in a sealed room. Quincy froze. "Dante, that's massive, beyond our current strategy. I don't need a strategy," Dante interrupted, his voice calm yet sharp. "I need a civilized form of retaliation. They just showed me exactly why this airline is failing. Not because of finance, but because of attitude. And I'll teach them what that costs." He ended the call, leaving Quincy with the sound of his own quickened breathing. Dante leaned back, eyes fixed on the window. Below the clouds, the world kept turning as if nothing had happened. Monica passed by, smiling at Gregory, her head lowered in deference. Dante watched her, and in his eyes there was no anger anymore, only analysis. He opened his notes app and began typing. Pattern. Poor leadership equals decayed culture, a loss of humanity. Solution. Rebuild system from the root. Each word appeared like a chisel carving into stone. He wasn't writing words, he was writing intent. The first-class cabin settled into the quiet rhythm of engines and shallow laughter. Gregory was still boasting to another passenger about Atlas merging with a major partner. He had no idea that the partner was Reeves Holdings. Dante smiled faintly, as if watching a play where he was both the audience and the unseen director, the one who already held the script. Amid the calm, Lena Brooks walked by again. She greeted softly, her voice tinged with hesitation. "Everything all right, Mr. Reeves?" He looked up, his tone gentle. "Fine. But things might be about to change." Lena frowned, puzzled. "Change? How so?" "The entire sky," he said. She chuckled lightly, thinking he was joking. But Dante never joked. Never. As the sunset spilled through the window, he placed his hands on the keyboard once more. The final email went out to his legal team. "Prepare urgent M&A file. Target. Atlas Airways. Aeronova Group. Cap. 3.5B USD. Prioritize speed. No negotiation. Objective. Gain voting control within 24 hours. His fingers hovered in mid-air, then pressed send. One small motion, enough to make thousands of people dozens of offices, and an in total industry tremble. Inside the dimming cabin, Monica kept smiling, Gregory kept drinking, Lena kept serving. None of them knew they were on the last flight ever to operate under the name Atlas Airways. And Dante Reeves, the passenger once dismissed in seat 2A, had just set in motion a deal that would go down in history, not for the money it made, but for the way one man chose to rise above humiliation, through power. The sunset painted half the plane in crimson, its reflection glowing across the glass before Dante Reeves. In the first-class cabin, everything moved slowly. The soft clink of glasses, the distant roll of a trolley, the low laughter of men drunk on arrogance. But beneath that quiet surface, another symphony was beginning. One of power and consequence. Dante's phone buzzed non-stop. Quincy Hart, Nina Patel, Sophia Marquez, all were online. Atlas Airways Wi-Fi, unknowingly, had become the emergency network for a deal that would shake the entire U.S. aviation industry. "We're ready," Quincy reported. "Aeronova's stock is at a record low. If we buy aggressively in after-hours trading, we can hold over 30% by tonight." "Do it," Dante replied curtly. "You really want to pour this much money into the airline?" Sophia's voice was calm but tight. "It's not about money," Dante said, eyes fixed on the window. "It's about a lesson. Some places only change when they're bought." Across the aisle, Gregory Shaw was still boasting, blissfully unaware that his own company was being repriced by the second. They're cutting staff, slashing benefits, raising ticket prices, and still losing money. This airline's dying. Monica chuckled. "Then you'd better find a new job soon." "Me?" Gregory thumped his chest. "I control the East Coast premium routes. No one can touch me." Dante tilted his head, smiling faintly. Those words, "no one can touch me," were exactly what false power always believed. But he knew better. In the real world, everything had a price. He opened his laptop again. Numbers streamed across the screen like blood through veins. One by one, shares of Aeronova Group were being quietly absorbed by his investment fund, piece by piece, seat by seat. The airline that once prided itself on flying high was now being dragged down by the man they had humiliated. Sophia's final report arrived. "At this pace, we'll secure 51% voting control before landing. But Dante, this will trigger a shockwave. The media, the board, shareholders." "Let them be shocked," he interrupted. "Sometimes the world needs a storm to be cleaned." Monica returned with a tray of wine. "Mr. Reeves, we've just updated our wine selection. Would you like to try one?" Her voice was suddenly sweeter, her tone softened. She'd noticed the rare Patek Philippe gleaming on his wrist, a timepiece owned only by the ultra-wealthy. "I thought this cabin was out of drinks," Dante said quietly. Monica froze, her smile stiffening. "Ah, my apologies. Earlier It's fine," he interrupted, taking a sip. "Just remember, one day your attitude might make someone buy the place you work for." She laughed, assuming he was joking. But Dante never joked as she walked away. He turned to the window, the clouds below layered like waves in a silver ocean. He saw himself in them, a man swimming against the current, but always knowing exactly where the shore was. The phone buzzed again. Nina Patel. "Update. Redwood Capital, major shareholder, willing to sell 19% if the offer is high enough. They've lost faith in current leadership. Dante replied, "Buy all of it. No negotiation. That'll push us past 3.2 billion. I'm not buying because it's cheap. I'm buying to prove that respect has no price, but disrespect always does." The cabin fell into silence. Gregory drifted into sleep. Monica kept chatting. Lena quietly cleared forgotten glasses. Only Dante remained fully awake, his fingers tapping lightly on the armrest, each tap sending out another command from above the clouds. Far below, the lights of Reeves Holdings offices began to glow across time zones. In San Francisco, the legal team was summoned. In New York, the trading floor stayed open late. In London, Aeronova stock began showing unusual volatility. A takeover was unfolding, not in a boardroom, but mid-air. As night enveloped the sky, Dante closed his eyes. In the silence, he could hear his heart beat, deep, steady, powerful, like the pulse of a jet engine. He thought of Monica, of Gregory, of every face that had dismissed him. He didn't feel anger, only clarity. Because it's only when you're underestimated that you learn just how powerful you really are. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, the entire world will know. Dante Reeves was never just a first-class passenger. He was the man who owned the sky. The plane sliced through grey clouds, the cabin lights shifting to a soft amber glow. No one in first class realized that among them sat a man quietly rewriting the fate of their entire airline with just a few keystrokes. Dante Reeves sat still, his calm exterior giving the impression of a businessman reviewing emails. But inside, his mind was operating with surgical precision. Every click, every message sent, moved millions of dollars silently through investment channels, and every smirk, every dismissive glance around him was becoming evidence in their own downfall. In the seat beside him, Gregory Shaw slumped back, reeking of whiskey, laughing and talking as if he were in a bar instead of 30,000 feet in the air. He was the type of man who believed power was measured by the volume of his voice and the number of people beneath him. "This airline's gonna have to cut another route soon," Gregory said loudly, half asleep. "The execs are clueless. The CEO, he's probably sunbathing somewhere in Europe." "And what's your position at the company?" Dante asked, his tone polite. "Me?" Gregory lifted his chin with smug pride. "Regional director for the East, 20 years in. I know every corner of this place. If I walk, Atlas collapses." Dante looked at him, a faint, almost pitying smile touching his lips. The man didn't realize that in just a few hours, this self, proclaimed king of the region, would be reporting directly to the person he was bragging to. Up front, Monica Hale was laughing with flight supervisor Carl Denton. "See, Carl? People who are too confident always think they belong everywhere. That guy in 2A, you can just tell he doesn't fit in." "Yeah," Carl replied with a condescending smirk. "They think buying a first-class ticket makes them one of us." They both laughed, unaware that every word was being captured by the tiny microphone inside Dante's wristwatch, a device he often used to record meeting notes. He pressed a small button. "Recording. 2113. Passenger discrimination and verbal misconduct. Direct violation of Atlas Airways' service code." 3 rows back, Lena Brooks was still quietly doing her job. She moved swiftly, gracefully, her eyes flicking toward Dante now and then to make sure he was all right. When she discreetly placed a fresh napkin on his table, she whispered, "I'm sorry for my colleagues. I can't intervene directly, but I see what's happening." Dante nodded slightly, his voice low but firm. "Don't worry, Ms. Brooks. One day, I'll need people like you." She froze, puzzled by the calm certainty in his eyes, as if he were looking straight through time. Inside the cabin, Dante continued reviewing the files Nina Patel had sent. Anonymous employee reports, leaked internal emails. Together, they painted a damning picture. Flight attendants had filed multiple complaints about bias and favoritism, ignored or punished for speaking out. Dozens of passengers of color had reported mistreatment, their cases later deleted from the CRM system. Worst of all, the person who had approved those deletions was Carl Denton, the same flight supervisor, laughing at the front of the plane. Dante closed his laptop, eyes half shut. Not in anger, but in disappointment. Disappointment in a system built not to correct mistakes, but to conceal them. Meanwhile, far below on the ground, Sofia Marquez's legal team was moving like a storm. They finalized the remaining stock purchases, filed documentation with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and prepared to announce Reeves Holdings' full acquisition of Aeronova Group. A corporate takeover at cruising altitude, something the aviation world had never seen. When Dante opened his eyes again, the moonlight had filled the window. The view outside was serene, eerily at odds with the storm waiting below. He glanced toward Monica and Carl, still laughing, unaware that each laugh marked the end of their careers. "A company doesn't collapse because it runs out of money," Dante thought. "It collapses when its people believe they can step on others without being seen." He took a sip of water, the first since takeoff, and smiled. The storm was ready. All it needed now was to land. The wind hissed against the body of the plane, blending with the faint hum of the engines. The first-class cabin was unusually quiet, filled only with the rhythmic tapping of Dante Reeves's keyboard. The light from his screen reflected across his face, the glow of a revolution unfolding in silence. On the encrypted channel, data streamed rapidly. Reports flooded in from trading centers around the world: New York, London, Tokyo. Shares of Aeronova Group were being swept up through dozens of proxy funds. "Current holdings, 32.4%, Quincy Hart messaged. "Continue," Dante replied. "Price is climbing due to heavy volume." No negotiation. Just 2 words, cold as steel. Yet behind them was a financial operation of global scale, commanded by the man in seat 2A, the same man who only hours earlier had been asked to show his ID. Monica Hale passed by, glancing at him with a mix of curiosity and unease. Dante hadn't lifted his hands from the keyboard for an hour. She assumed he was just another mid-level manager buried in spreadsheets, unaware that in a matter of moments he would decide the future of her entire career. "Mr. Reeves," Monica said gently, "would you like another glass of wine?" "No, thank you," he replied. "I don't drink while I work." "Work?" She forced a smile. "On a plane?" Dante looked at her, his voice calm as air. "Some work can only be done from above." The answer unsettled her. She didn't understand. But in a few hours she would. From behind, Lena Brooks approached quietly, placing a small envelope on Dante's table. "You left your boarding pass receipt. I thought you might need it. He nodded. Thank you, Lena. Do you remember what I told you? About needing someone like me? Yes. When the time comes, I'll find you. Lena smiled softly, her eyes still carrying a trace of fear. She didn't know that her smile would mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The plane jolted through heavy turbulence. Passengers gripped their armrests. Monica steadied her tray of wine, but Dante only smiled. To him, this shaking was nothing compared to the earthquake already rippling through the financial markets below. His phone vibrated again. A message from Sophia Marquez. Contacted Redwood Capital Partners. They've agreed to sell their full 19% stake, contingent on payment within 4 hours. Close it, Dante typed. That pushes total cost to $3.2 billion. Accepted. Speed is priority. A brief pause. Then Sophia replied, Roger. Preparing control disclosure documents. Dante leaned back, eyes closed. In his mind appeared the image of a young black man, 25 years ago, standing outside a conference room because he'd been mistaken for catering staff. Back then, he had stayed silent and smiled. Now, he didn't need to smile anymore. He owned the room. 20 minutes later, a new message popped up from Quincy. Done. Reeves Holdings now holds 51.4% voting control of Aeronova Group. Transaction complete. Dante stared at the words for a long moment, then took a deep breath. A strange sensation moved down his spine. Not triumph, but gravity. Because true power was never about what you could buy. It was about what you would change. As the plane began its descent, Gregory Shaw stirred awake, the glow from his phone lighting up his face. Breaking news was spreading fast. Aeronova stock surges amid rumors of sudden acquisition. Gregory's expression drained of color. He typed frantically, then turned to Monica. Hey, did you see this? Looks like our company's being bought out. What, by who? Monica asked, half laughing. No idea. Some massive firm. Over $3 billion. Dante glanced Kienways, his voice low, almost a whisper. Around that. Gregory didn't catch it, nodding absently as he kept scrolling. Dante opened his phone again, reading the final confirmation. Acquisition complete. Reeves Holdings is now the majority owner of Aeronova Group. He exhaled slowly. Not in joy, not in vengeance, just a deep, heavy calm. From a passenger once dismissed, he had become the new owner of the airline, right there in the sky where they thought he didn't belong. Outside, the clouds parted, revealing the lights of San Francisco below, glittering like a sea of stars beneath the wings. Dante gazed down, a quiet thought crossing his mind. They had forgotten that sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one who commands the storm. The plane's wheels touched the runway, the frame trembling softly. The hiss of the engines blended with the screech of the brakes, followed by a wave of silence that swept through the first-class cabin. Dante Reeves opened his eyes, his pupils darkening like the sea before a storm. On his phone screen, one final message glowed bright. Aeronova Group acquisition confirmed. A short sentence, but powerful enough to alter the fate of thousands, including those who had looked down on him only hours earlier. Gregory Shaw jolted upright, eyes wide in disbelief. His phone buzzed relentlessly with breaking financial alerts. Aeronova stock halts in emergency trading. Rumors of Reeves Holdings' takeover of Atlas Airways. No way, Gregory stammered. Reeves Holdings. Dante Reeves. That's impossible. He turned, and in that instant, his eyes met Dante's calm, unwavering gaze. Silence filled the space between them. Then Gregory understood. His face drained of color. You're Dante Reeves? Yes, Dante replied evenly. And it seems we'll be talking soon, Regional Director Shaw. Gregory's mouth opened, but no words came out. Up ahead, Monica Hale was busy helping passengers prepare to disembark. Spotting Dante still seated, she approached, forcing a bright smile. Mr. Reeves, we hope you enjoyed your flight today. Very much, Dante said softly. Especially the service. She didn't recognize the weight hidden behind those words. Not yet. It wasn't until Carl Denton stepped closer and whispered into her ear, Monica, have you seen the news? Our airline's been bought by Reeves Holdings. Monica froze, eyes widening. She turned toward Dante, watching him calmly close his laptop, every movement slow, precise, as if this moment had been planned long ago. A chill crept down her spine. The cabin door opened. Bright light from the jet bridge spilled into the aisle. At the exit, a crowd of executives in dark suits and a line of reporters stood waiting. Cameras pointed toward first class, as if expecting someone important. The PA system crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Dante Reeves, CEO of Reeves Holdings and the new owner of Atlas Airways. A moment of stunned silence followed. Monica turned sharply. Carl stood frozen. Gregory gripped his phone, hands trembling. All sound seemed to fade, replaced only by the pounding of their hearts. Dante rose from his seat. Without a word, he pulled a silver business card from his wallet, the engraved letters gleaming under the cabin lights. Dante Reeves, CEO, Reeves Holdings. He placed it on the fold-out table, right where Monica had once set a drink for someone else, but never for him. Then, in a calm, steady voice, he said, "Thank you for the most remarkable flight of my life." He walked past Monica, unhurried, toward the door. Lena stood there, tray still in hand, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Congratulations, Mr. Reeves," she whispered. "No." He smiled gently. "Congratulations to you, because starting today, Atlas Airways will change, and I'll need people like you to help me do it." Lena bowed slightly, her lips trembling in disbelief. As Dante stepped off the plane, a storm of camera flashes erupted. In front of him stood executives, lawyers, and financial journalists, all aware that a $3.2 billion acquisition had just been sealed mid-flight, the first of its kind in aviation history. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Reeves, is it true this takeover was inspired by your experience on this flight?" Dante stopped. The entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. He looked directly into the nearest camera, his voice firm, every word ringing like steel. Sometimes people need a reason to change, and sometimes that reason is just a glass of water that never arrived. Behind him, Monica and Carl had emerged from the aircraft. They stared at the scene in shock and dread, realizing that the man they had dismissed was now their employer. "Oh my God," Monica whispered. "What have we done?" "We just spilled water on the man who can fire the whole company," Carl muttered, his voice hoarse. Around them, chaos and awe mixed. But Dante stood still. No gloating, no revenge. Only quiet resolve. His eyes turned toward the horizon, where the planes of Atlas Airways were still taking off, carrying an outdated emblem of arrogance. Tomorrow, they would bear a new one, a symbol of equality. And that night, history would record a simple truth. A man once disrespected on a flight had just bought the entire sky. A week after the event that shook the financial world, the headquarters of Atlas Airways in Chicago buzzed with chaos. Ever since the news broke that Reeves Holdings had officially taken control, hundreds of employees had been living in a storm of rumors. The doors of the 40th floor boardroom opened. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Dante Reeves stood at the head of the long table, the light glinting off his black suit, giving him an air that was both calm and dangerous. Around him sat a mix of faces, some from Reeves Holdings, others remnants of Atlas leadership, their expressions tight, bracing for judgment. "Let's begin," Dante said, his low voice carrying the weight of command. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to fix the way this company treats people." Dana Mitchell, the aviation consultant he had just brought in, tapped her remote. The first slide appeared, cold numbers projected on a massive screen. Over the past 5 years, Atlas has received 84 complaints related to discrimination. 90% were dismissed without investigation. The room froze. Whispers died down. Dante crossed his arms, his gaze sharp as a blade. Who authorized those dismissals? Sophia Marquez, Dante's legal advisor, flipped through her documents. All of them were approved for closure by Carl Denton, regional supervisor, and Bradley Thompson, Eastern Division Director. The mention of Bradley Thompson's name made several people lower their eyes. Dante looked around. "Where is he?" "He called in sick yesterday," Dinah replied. "Good," Dante nodded. "He'll need plenty of time to reflect on his poor decisions." He turned to the next slide, a photo of Monica Hale. His voice remained steady, but the air in the room grew heavy as lead. "This is the flight attendant who served me on that flight," he said. "And she didn't just fail to serve. She represented exactly how Atlas saw people through the lens of color." Silence thickened. "The internal audit," Sophia continued, "confirms there were 3 prior complaints filed against Ms. Hale. All were blocked by Carl Denton." "Both will be suspended indefinitely," Dante said firmly, "until an independent disciplinary panel completes its review." An older man, the deputy head of HR, spoke up, his voice trembling. "Mr. Reeves, if you terminate them now, the media might call it personal retaliation. Aren't you worried about that?" Dante turned, his eyes suddenly bright, almost fierce. "I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm afraid of silence, and I refuse to let a company I own operate on fear." He gestured toward the door. Lena Brooks stepped in. She still wore her flight attendant uniform, but now a new nameplate gleamed on her chest. Customer Service Training Advisor. Lena's hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were clear. "Brooks," Dante said, "please tell everyone what you saw that day." Her voice was small but steady. "I saw injustice, but I also saw fear. We were all afraid of losing our jobs if we spoke up. I just hope that now, no one has to be afraid anymore." The room was silent. In that moment, Dante saw a reflection of himself 20 years earlier. A young man who had once stayed silent out of the same fear. "Thank you, Lena," he said. "From today forward, every employee can report misconduct directly to an independent department under your supervision. No management filter, no gatekeepers." The meeting stretched into the afternoon. Dante outlined sweeping reforms, mandatory equality and conduct training for all staff, a new anonymous feedback system, reporting directly to the ethics board, and a full restructuring of regional management to eliminate weak oversight. No one spoke. They just watched the man who had turned their entire organization inside out in less than a week. That evening, images of Dante Reeves leaving the Atlas Airways headquarters flooded news outlets and social media. First black CEO to own a major U.S. airline launches anti-discrimination overhaul. Behind that photo, Dante was walking slowly through the grand lobby, neon lights reflecting off the marble floor. Each step echoed like a hammer striking the coffin of an old era. Tomorrow, the Atlas Airways sign would come down. But what Dante Reeves was building was more than a new brand. It was a new culture, one where respect would no longer be a privilege, but a responsibility. 6 months later, the name Atlas Airways had vanished from the skies. In its place soared gleaming aircraft bearing a new logo, Equitas Airlines. 2 parallel silver lines formed the symbol WUTS, slicing through the clouds like a declaration of a new era. Equality in every flight. At the brand launch event, camera flashes flickered like lightning. Standing before hundreds of reporters, Dante Reeves took the stage, his navy blue suit illuminated against the pristine white of the Boeing 787 behind him. His voice was steady, clear, and filled with conviction. "Equitas is not just a name," he said. "It's a promise that every passenger and every employee will be treated the same, with dignity, with respect, and with the pride of flying together." The hall erupted in applause, but what made Dante smile wasn't the flashing cameras. It was the sea of faces before him, the employees who had believed in his vision. Among them stood Lena Brooks, now the Director of Customer Experience Training. Before the event, Dana Mitchell, the consultant Dante had brought in, presented a 6-month progress report. On the large screen, the numbers glowed like proof of a miracle. Revenue up 17% year over year. Customer complaints down 62%. Staff turnover cut in half. Employee satisfaction reaching a record 94%. "This isn't just a company that was saved," Dana said. "Equitas has become a model for the entire industry." Dante didn't respond, only smiled faintly. He knew that behind those numbers were thousands of personal stories. People who had once been afraid to speak, now empowered to act. Passengers who had once felt invisible now greeted like honored guests. The journey, however, hadn't been smooth. Many had criticized his reforms as being too emotional for business. To that, Dante always replied, "It's not emotion. It's ethics. And when done right, ethics always pays." Inside the Equitas Training Center, Lena was instructing a group of new flight attendants. Her voice was firm and confident, far from the timid young woman she once was on that fateful flight. "When you serve a passenger, don't look at their ticket," Look at their eyes. Don't ask, "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Ask, "What can I do to make your journey more comfortable?" Dante stood quietly behind the glass, listening to every word. In his eyes glimmered something like a father's pride. Turning to Sophia Marquez beside him, he said softly, "She understands what an entire generation of leaders forgot, that service isn't submission, it's respect." News of Equitas's rebirth spread faster than any of its new flights. Business magazines called Dante Reeves the man who turned humiliation into an amour. Harvard Business Review published an article titled "The Reeves Method When Ethics Becomes Profit." Reeves Holdings' stock price doubled, and airlines across America began adopting Equitas's training policies. At the office of the International Aviation Federation, a formal letter arrived for Dante. "We wish to honor you for proving that equality is not just a slogan, it's a viable business strategy." But for Dante, the true reward lay elsewhere. One morning, during an unannounced inspection, he boarded a short flight from Dallas to Seattle. Seat 2A, the same as before. A flight attendant approached with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Reeves. It's an honor to have you with us." "Thank you," he said, "but today, treat me like every other passenger." The attendant smiled gently. "Of course, sir. At Equitas, everyone already is." Dante nodded and gazed out the window. Outside, the clouds parted as sunlight glinted off the silver wings of the plane, the Iqbal symbol shining proudly. In that reflection, he saw himself, a man who had once been looked down upon, now redefining power through the very thing he was once denied: respect. As the aircraft climbed, the captain's voice came through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Equitas Airlines, where every flight is a journey toward equality." Dante closed his eyes and smiled faintly. Amid the endless blue sky, he no longer heard the roar of engines, only the heartbeat of a dream realized. A new airline, a new culture, and an old lesson reborn. Respect isn't something you're given, it's something you build. 1 year had passed since that fateful flight. At the Chicago International Convention Center, the stage lights illuminated every row as hundreds of representatives from airlines, transport conglomerates, and human rights organizations rose to their feet in thunderous applause. On stage, Dante Reeves, now known around the world as the man who brought justice mid-air, stepped forward slowly, joined by Lena Brooks, now Executive Vice President of Customer Experience at Equitas Airlines. Lena spoke first, her voice warm and confident. "A year ago, we were a failing airline. We hadn't just lost customers, we'd lost our soul. Today, Equitas stands here not because of numbers, but because of a philosophy. Respect is the most powerful fuel for every flight." The hall erupted again in applause. When she stepped aside, Dante moved to the podium, the lights reflecting in his calm eyes that had once seen the world judge him by color, now reflecting belief. "Exactly 12 months ago," he began, "I sat on a flight and was asked to show my ID to prove I belonged in first class. Today I have nothing left to prove. I only need to know that anyone, in any seat across the sky, deserves to be treated with dignity." The screen behind him lit up, showing figures that stunned the entire aviation industry. Equitas's market value had doubled. Customer satisfaction was the highest in the sector. and the airline had just received the Airline Equality Leadership 2025 award. But Dante didn't speak of success. He spoke of humanity. "I didn't buy an airline," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I bought back the chance for those once looked down upon to finally stand tall." The room fell silent. In the last row, Monica Hale, the former flight attendant who had unknowingly started it all, sat quietly. She no longer wore the uniform of her past, just a simple blouse, the kind worn by frontline staff at a small regional airline in the Midwest. In her hand was an invitation marked "Honored Guest, Career Restoration Program." When the speech ended, she stood and walked toward the stage, her hands trembling. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice hoarse, I was the one who made you feel humiliated. But if not for my mistake, Equitas might never have been born. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for forgiveness, but for teaching the world through compassion instead of vengeance." The entire hall went still. Dante looked at her for a long moment, then replied, "Thank you, Monica. Real change doesn't begin with a contract. It begins when someone finds the courage to admit their wrongs and want to do better." After the ceremony, Dante stood by the window of the high-rise office overlooking the night runway. One by one, Equitas planes lifted into the air, their red and green lights blinking like the pulse of a world that had learned to fly on respect. Sofia Marquez joined him. "You've done what few could," she said. "You turned ethics into a business model." "No," Dante replied, still gazing outside. "I just did the right thing. The world finally decided the right thing has value." His phone buzzed with a new headline: "Global Transportation Equality Alliance. 27 airlines join, adopting the Reeves method." Dante smiled faintly. The Reeves method, once a media tagline, now an international ethical standard. But he knew the journey wasn't over. There are still flights where people are judged by their color, gender, or origin, he said quietly. And as long as that exists, we haven't landed yet. Days later, he boarded another flight. Seat 2A, the same as before, this time on his own airline. The flight attendant, a young brown-skinned man, approached with a bright smile. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you?" "Just a glass of water," Dante said. "Right away, sir." The attendant turned to leave, and Dante smiled faintly. No one recognized him. No one treated him differently. And that was exactly how he wanted it. A world where respect didn't require a title. As the plane soared into the night sky, Dante looked down at the glittering lights below. He remembered his father's words. "You can't change the world with a fist, only with an open hand." That open hand had lifted an entire industry out of its darkness, and at 30,000 feet, among the still clouds, he finally understood. Justice isn't punishment. Justice is when no one else has to endure the injustice you once did. The story of Dante Reeves closed with the first light of dawn rising ahead of the cockpit, where the sky opened wide, clear, vast, and fair. The sky was never fair to Dante Reeves, not until he redefined what fairness truly meant. From a passenger who was once dismissed in seat 2A, he turned humiliation into the spark that ignited an entire industry, turned pain into vision, and turned a glass of water denied into a lesson on human dignity for the whole world. Dante's story is not about power or wealth. It is about the strength of choice, the choice not to rage, but to act, not to destroy, but to rebuild. Because sometimes revenge isn't about making someone fall, but about making an nth system rise the right way. Today, the planes of Equitas Airlines take off every day carrying a single belief: that every person, no matter who they are, where they sit, or how they look, deserves to be treated with respect. An empire built from the pride of a man once looked down upon, and sustained by the compassion of someone who knows what it means to be judged. If this story makes you believe that justice doesn't need force, only vision and heart, leave a like to share that message. Subscribe to join more journeys where ordinary people continue to do extraordinary things. And before you go, leave a comment with just 3 words: justice takes flight. Because maybe, like Dante, one day you'll be the one who teaches justice to fly.